Girl, you the man, and she love me when I'm in it, and she never be pretending, nothing is real. She gon' tell you what she bought it, cause she know you can't afford it. Know you can get it, looking exquisite, no competition, stay on a pivot. Who be watching, they be plotting, she so motherfucking independent. Mama be big, got on her grind, she had to get out her mama house. Daddy be tripping, now she be whipping, ain't no more on granny couch. Fashion over, got that
Hi, welcome to the E-Spot with Camille. I'm your host, Camille Cower, and today I am thrilled to announce that I have another Kaleidoscope project designer here that designed the beautiful inn in Massachusetts, the one and only Lenox Inn. And today I have Nile Johnson. He has done so much already in his career, and it's like 20 years he's been working in the industry. So much to dive into. I don't want to waste a single minute because I want to be able to give you all the time that I possibly can. So tell me, Nile, first of all, thank you so much for being my guest. But secondly, how did you get started in interior design?
Well, thanks for having me. And I get that question often, and I never really know how to answer it. So I will just say that I think it was just a part of me. I'm from Baltimore, didn't really know what design was. We had architects. We didn't have a whole lot of interior designers. I knew I was the kid that preferred to stay inside and move the furniture around. That was fun to me.
Instead of pouring
Instead of
concrete.
being out, yeah. And so they'd be like, "What did you do this summer?" I was like, "Oh, I moved the furniture around," and they'd be like, "Okay." So that, and then as I got older, I thought, well, my original plan was to go and be a buyer. I thought I was going to be a buyer. And then I thought I wanted to teach, and I kept changing majors. And finally, the explosion or the premiere of HGTV and FLN, Fine Living Network, happened. And I was like, oh, that's actually a career. You can actually do that. And so then I started investigating where can that, like in the phrase interior design, and found schools, and then just went to a community college for a little while to sort of like get my feet wet to see. And then from there, I transferred into the Art Institute of Philly. And the rest, as you could say, is kind of history, I guess. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a
My
lot of
history.
steps in between.
Yes.
So I'm
Oh, a
curious,
lot of steps in between. And a lot of mistakes and a lot of stumbles. I went to school straight out of high school. I didn't take the original path of being a buyer that I thought I was going to take. And I went to Morgan State and University in Baltimore. And the bridge got me. If anybody knows about Morgan State and the bridge, it's, you got to be, the bridge. It connects the campus across a busy street. And the bridge sort of sits in front of like they used to call it the canteen. So I'm dating myself. So they don't call it the canteen anymore. I'm really dating myself. But it sits sort of in front of the canteen where lunch and all that happens.
Oh, like cafeteria.
Yeah. And you can get everything on the bridge. Like you can get incense on the bridge. You can get groceries on the bridge. You can get the newest mixtape on the bridge. Like your whole life, you can meet your friends. The bridge is like a social place, right? But it's also where you walk. It's like how you get from maybe your dorm to Holmes Hall, or from Holmes Hall over to Montebello Complex to pay, tuition, or maybe there's even a class at the gym that you have to get to. So you're using the bridge daily. And the joke was, don't let the bridge get you, because you can get caught up. You get caught up in the Matrix. You can get caught up on the bridge. And I would get caught up on the bridge. And needless to say, classes just did not happen for me. So my parents were not about that life, and they pulled me out.
Okay.
Or literally, before I embarrassed myself any further, and I worked. And I'm a wholehearted believer that you have to do a lot of what you don't want to do to figure out what you do want to do. And that was certainly the process for me. I worked in a number of different places, doing a number of different things that I didn't really love, but they've sort of helped me formulate sort of how I run my business. And then that's when, I was about 20 when the FLN network and HGTV started to become more prevalent. And that's when I looked into it. And my parents were like, yeah, that's nice, but you wasted a little bit of time, so we're not interested. And so I had to prove myself. So I had to go to community college, pay for myself at community college first, and then take the next step on my own and transfer to the Art Institute. And I got to the Art Institute around, it was like 23-ish, I believe. And still proved, because my mom was just like, we'll see. And I did, that first semester, I, proved myself and did what I was supposed to do. And it worked out. I went to Art Institute for undergrad, and then I went on to Chatham University for grad school. And it was a great experience, but it was not I don't want anybody to think that it was a direct experience. Like, it was not.
Yeah.
I knew what I wanted to do in 11th grade, and I went out and I did it. I've run into tons of people, and more often than not, there are a lot of people like me versus I know maybe 2 or 3 people who are like, yep, I wanted to be a nurse in 11th grade. I went to school to be a nurse. I went all the way through. I've got my doctorate in nursing, and I'm a nurse to this day. That's very rare. It's more so.
I would agree with that.
My path, So
Yep.
Don't get discouraged.
No, but I also wonder if there was ever a time that you felt like it was kind of a calling for you, or did you realize you just had an eye for it, or did you feel like everything was a matter of you just got trained and educated, but you still had that passion for it as well? Because there's always that debate of whether or not, with creative careers anyway, if it's something that can be taught or if it's just something you're naturally kind of born with that can be kind of contained, or so I'm a child of an artist, full disclosure, and she went to college, she did the whole studied abroad, did everything the right way as far as becoming a real artist in that sense, and not just someone who learned from TV or whatever, but has that natural gift that can still do it. There's still that kind of differentiation. And I think sometimes people might feel like they have that natural gift and wonder if college will help with that, or if it's something that you want to do, but maybe you don't have that natural talent, that it's something you can in fact learn. And what do you think about that?
I think it's both. I think for a long time I had this idea in my head that, either you got it or you don't. Mm-hmm. And if you do, then you go to school for it and you hone it. And I have a friend, I don't even think she realizes that she did this for me, but I have a friend, Tiffany, and Tiffany is an interior designer in Chicago. And she was on a panel for some event we were at, and I was sitting in the back watching her, and she talked about her, I forget how she got on the subject, but she talked about not going to college to get a degree. And for some reason in my mind, I don't know why, but this is just how your experiences sometimes shape your thoughts. Mm-hmm. I thought, everybody just chooses, and it wasn't a choice for her. It was, she said, I wish I could have gone to school, but art school was expensive and it wasn't something that was on my radar at the time. And if I really could have gone, I would have gone. And she's immensely talented. Yeah. So she sort of opened my eyes up to the fact that there are people out here who are crazy talented, and just for whatever reason, finances, just circumstances, whatever, or just a choice, don't go to college. Mm-hmm. And they still have what it takes creatively to get where they need to be in terms of a design career. Right. So I always think now, and then the other thing to that too is, it really does depend. If I'm going to be 100% honest with you, it depends on what your interior design, it depends on what your end goal is. I always knew I wanted to do residential design. If I knew, this is going to get me in trouble, but that's okay. If I knew what,
I can always edit it out. No, I'm kidding.
Well, hey, if this helps somebody,
I'm not trying to ruin anybody's careers here.
No.
This is not a gotcha show, I promise.
But if I knew then what I know now, and I even had a professor tell me this when I was thinking about graduate school, I probably would have went. Maybe I still would have went to undergrad for design. Maybe not. Maybe I would have focused on a community college for design. And then I would have piggybacked business school onto it, because that is what you need. Yeah. See, in interior design school, especially for residential designers, You only use 20% of what you learn in school. So you pay that huge tuition bill, and you walk away with only about 20% do you use. And the other 80% is trial and error, and you are learning as you go along the way. And unfortunately, it's typically with clients. And so you have a lot of mistakes and a lot of issues that you run into. And if there were either a revamping of the programs where people could learn these are the business policies and this is how businesses run, or if there was something that combined sort of business school and design, I think that would help tremendously, especially for residential designers. Commercial designers have it a little bit better, I think, because you use a lot more of what you learn in school in the commercial world. But residential entrepreneurs, we do everything, when we have our own sort of shop. And so our brains were not wired that way to know. I mean, even just knowing, hey, this is the team I need when I start. I need to have these people in place to help me. It's not something that's common knowledge. So I nowadays, when somebody reaches out and says, I'm thinking about entering this career, my response is always different. And it's always it's based on what your real needs are and what you want. There's no one right way to go about it.
Okay.
And that's the lucky thing for design. There's no mandate in terms of where you have to start or what the minimum requirement is. I know there's a lot of designers who don't like that, but I think it's great because it really does allow for people to decide what works best for them. College.
Or their budgets for that matter. Not everybody can afford Mr. Nile Johnson.
Yeah,
but they might be able to afford his intern. No, I'm kidding.
There you go.
So speaking on that same point, you said 20% is what you learned from school. And I would say that's the same for almost every profession I've worked in, because I was a spa director and an esthetician. And they teach you how to pass the boards, basically, and the basic things you need to know about skincare, but they don't teach you about everything you said about booth rental, insurance issues, or just knowing how to run a business, or having all those different insurance things, or even scheduling and the different laws that the state has that, especially now with COVID, all the different rules and regulations and so on, they don't teach you all of that.
Yep.
And even I have my degree in sociology. And even with that, I felt like it really taught me how to look at statistics and know how to break that down. No, you're falling for the wrong numbers. They're using tricks and stuff, and also understanding groups. But it's still, like you said, once you're in the profession, that's when you really learn. And I'm sure each client is different. So for you, what was the 80% that you learned that you would suggest people, or maybe not 80% because that's a little high number, but what would you say would be the 50% of the stuff you need to learn before getting, or maybe you have to do some 30% of it on the job, but so what's the 20% they need to learn for sure while they're in school? What are the key things that you are still using that you learned in school?
So in school, it really is about honing how to sort of, I sort of liken it to swimming to a degree, right? Now, don't hold me to this because I don't know a ton about swimming from a technical standpoint, right? But I imagine I can get in a pool, right? Or used to, have it in a while, but I could get in a pool and I could swim. I found that I could swim the length of a pool, down and back underwater with no issue, right? But on what is that? The freestyle or whatever they call it.
Backstrokes,
whatever. I would have issues because it's to me in my body, I felt like I was using more muscle. I was putting more out, right? So there are coaches and trainers to teach you how to hone. And nobody taught me how to go underwater and do that. I just sort of taught myself. So there are people that could teach me better ways to do that and to swim above water, how to sort of hone my technique. And I think that's the 20% that you get in school, right? You come in with this amazing creative mind that can really go anywhere. And what you get in school is sort of, it's like putting a saddle on a horse, right? That's what you get. You get that sort of, we don't want to put you in a box, but we want to show you how to hone those skills so then you can really, you can aim them where they're supposed to go, right? It's like with singers. Some singers sing and they're like, oh wow, they can really sing, but they don't have any control. There's a difference between a singer that can sing
and they blow out their vocal cords.
Yep, and they blow, right, because they're like, I'm going to do this run, and there's no control, so they can't tell the note where to go. I think that's what design is like. Design school. It's like, we're going to show you how to control your creativity. How to make it do what it is that you really wanted to do, or how to think, how to figure out in other ways to sort of help your clients. That's what design school does. The 80% when you're out is business. And really, like you said, it is in every career. I think the thing that you have to know, though, is that what you need is what you need to do the best job you can do, right? And people will come along and try to manipulate that and say, well, I don't really want to wait 3 weeks, or I want you to, why do you need a month to come back to me with a plan, or why do you, and it didn't dawn on me until probably a few months ago where I was like, and I had this conversation with a client. I said, listen, I was like, how many pictures of me are there on my website? And they're like, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2. And I'm like, yeah, no videos. So you didn't come to me for my sparkling personality, right? You filled out that questionnaire because you like the images on my site. And the images on my site got that way because I was allowed to go through my process the way I need to go through my process for the final product to turn out the way that it did. So if that's the quality of work you desire, because that's the quality of work I desire to put out, this is the process that I need to follow in order to give you that. But that takes a while, because that's all about sort of being confident in your skill, but also being confident enough to know that if it doesn't work out, it wasn't meant for you.
Right.
If the client has to go somewhere else, they weren't your client. If they get upset, it's okay. It's not about you. See, creatives, you know this. I mean, we're super sensitive people because our creativity, our art is an extension of ourselves, right? Do you like the room? Therefore, do you like me? We are very attached to what we do. Not to say that your lawyer or your accountant isn't attached or isn't invested, but there's a whole other level of,
there's like different quantum. That qualifies it for them.
Exactly.
Yeah, different.
And so I think you get through that 80% better if you know, I got this. What I'm offering is amazing, and the people who want it will come, and the people who don't, it's okay. And then you just take it as it goes.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, speaking of people coming and going, tell us about Linux Inn and the Kaleidoscope project. So you were one of the designers that worked on the project. What room did you do? And tell a little bit about your involvement with Kaleidoscope.
It was the Barbara. It was the Barbara, named after Barbara Bush, I believe.
I was thinking Barbara Streisand.
No, that would have been nice. That would have been nice.
I don't think of Barbara Bush having a style pattern.
Well,
so that's interesting.
It was okay. If the before pictures would certainly give you, I would say, what I would think of Barbara Bush. I mean, personally, I think a lot of the rooms were named after iconic women, because I know there was a Dolly, and I can't think of some of the other ones, but I know there was a Barbara and a Dolly. And I got a phone call from Amy, and she had been referred to me by Rashida Gray from Gray Space, who was amazing. And she just asked me about doing the show house. And, I'll shoot straight from the hip. I'm always honest. And so she's going through the whole thing. And I've done a few show houses before, and I'm listening thinking, okay, yep, Yep. Got it. Yeah. What's my cost going to be? What am I going to have to spend on the show house? Because I had already told myself that I wasn't doing any more show houses because I just philosophically had a issue with me putting out money for show houses that weren't mine. It's not my house. And the stuff basically stays. So why am I paying for it? Well, she got to the end. She's like, and we're covering, and, you know, we've got a budget. And I was like, oh, I'm in. And
wait, I just want to just a lot of people of color or BIPOC community people, like we're the latest, hottest thing. Everybody wants to hire us. But a lot of times that budget part is not always so quick to, you know, we want you, but we don't really have a budget.
Yeah.
So just speak for a minute. I just want to take that in and just marinate in that moment of they started with the budget. They didn't make you go jump through all the hoops and loops and do all the extra stuff. They started with the numbers and let you know what your involvement is.
That you had that it was a.
That's why I love the Kaleidoscope Project. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I'm picking up what you're putting down. Like honestly, that is how I felt. It was. I've said this to Amy. I've said this to Patty. I've said this to Liz. It was by far. I've done a few show houses. It was by far the best show house experience that I've ever had, and I was not engaged in terms of in person as much as I would have wanted to be because it's in Massachusetts and I'm in Pennsylvania. And this was during COVID and I have 3 little ones that were going to school from home. And so I'm sort of doing that and trying to be here for them. But
a lot to navigate.
But the support, I mean, the monetary support was, first of all, that was mind blowing, right? That, okay, there's a budget. And there's donors and you're going to pick from these things and this is what it's going to be. But then the project management support was incredible. Like Amy.
Oh, yeah, you guys had interns from all these different schools like Parsons and so on as well.
We did.
They offer scholarships for them as well, which is awesome.
My intern I didn't get to connect with and I'm not sure what happened there. But Amy she was like my whole design team. I mean, and I tried really to keep things as easy as possible when designing from, you know, a long distance. I was like, okay, this is a show house. What is it that I want to say? I would like to sort of keep things. It's a very quaint, sort of cozy.
And a very transit since it's a bed and breakfast.
Yeah, it's a bed and breakfast and it's got a sort of quirky sort of vibe to it. So I like some of the patina finish on the fireplace. I like that it's, you know, got some of these old touches and I sort of want to keep those, right? So that was sort of my mindset. I wanted to we'll do white walls. We'll darken the moldings. We'll bring some definition in that way. You know, the floors are, you know, fine in terms of the style I was going for, right?
Yeah, Barbara.
And Amy was just sensational in her help for the project. And I think everybody really went into this. It was a labor of love, is all I can say, really, for me. And it seemed that way when I walked through the whole project and looked at what everyone else did. It was like everybody put their best foot forward. They were sort of zeroing in on what their concept was and hit the target.
And you guys have gotten a lot of support as well with all the different press and publicity, and there's more to come. And I think Lenox Inn actually opens next week.
Oh, does it?
I think so. I stalk all of your pages, so I'm prepared. Okay. And because, you know, I have a lot going on. So I'm like, I don't want people to email me a lot because I'm like, I don't have time to read all of them.
Listen, I understand that which is why I'm really bad at responding to emails. I'm never in my email. I use a totally different service for clients called Basecamp. And I tell them, like, we use Basecamp because it keeps your stuff separate. We communicate that way. And so people always get frustrated with me about my emails. I'm like, I'm sorry. I can't.
It's overwhelming. And there's like, I keep unsubscribing to these different newsletters.
And they keep coming back.
And they're still coming. I love it. Like, I love you, Sax, but really, I don't need
Yes,
an email every day, five a day. But
I
anyway, I digress.
know. I know.
I mean, my husband doesn't need it either. He's like, why are there packages coming again? It's Sax's fault, not mine.
I couldn't get away from the sale.
Because their store is not friendly. I just put it out there. The store here locally is not very friendly. So I never go in there. But the
Right.
emails are so inviting and nice. And they're always like
I know.
70% off.
I know.
How can I say
Like,
no?
I can't resist. It was a good sale. It was a good deal.
Much like your show house, having full carte blanche on everything you want and donations. And
The
so
donations
how
were
did you,
amazing.
so there was a lot of things that you couldn't do with the home because it is a historic home.
Yeah.
Were there any challenges you had to work around that maybe somebody at home also might have some of those challenges, like smaller restrooms, or I know like some of the different people had weird ceilings and interesting closet spaces because it is an older home. So how did you work around any of those, or did you have any of those challenges even?
I mean, I think in my space, ultimately, most people want that new construction finish, right? You know, really smooth walls, pristine floors, sort of no wear and tear, right? And it's easier to work with. It is. I've had projects where it's a brand new construction, a great shell, and you're just furnishing it and you're done. So for me, I looked at it from the standpoint of what are the things that, number one, I was brought into the project a little later than some of the other designers. So you already are a little bit behind. You can't, and then I got sick for 2 weeks. You can't be behind and not be able to, and try to do this fabulous, 3-month plan. It's just not going to work. So I thought, what does the room call for? And what are the things that are eyesores that you really could work around, or not even work around, but call attention to in a way that sort of blends it with the room. So I really just went for this, sort of relaxed, I don't know if you want to call it a loft, but really when you think of a space that's, been around for a while, and it's got, the original hardwoods, and it's got great moldings. I thought, what would a person who maybe lives in Soho in one of the pre-war buildings, or in a great loft, what would they want? What would they look for? Maybe they're not coming for something that's super chic and super refined, and there's all, everything is sort of tailored, and maybe they're coming for something that's like casual, but it feels chic. So I stuck to a really simple palette. I mean, it was like neutrals, grays, whites, blacks. And I just figured, let's space plan it so it's comfortable. And then let's make the bed super lush. And we'll embrace any of these other things. Like, the tarnished finish on the fireplace, the fact that the firebox wasn't perfect, it's okay. There's some chipped tiles, it's okay. Because it sort of is a part of the depth or the soul of what the room really is. And I feel like that sort of helped the room tell a story for me, for my space.
No, it's interesting because talking with so many of the different designers, they all had such different, unique ways of coming towards like their project. Like, what were their influences? What were their thoughts behind it? Whether they were bringing in their own culture or thinking of what kind, like with you, thinking of what kind of customer would stay in this room, like even thinking like that. So especially when you don't have you had a client because the person that owns the inn, I'm sure they were like, I want it nice. But you don't have someone that's constantly like, actually, can you make sure that it matches my 1980s fridge, or, whatever that different things they might have in the house that they love. So you kind of have the freedom of your own ideal of what you would think they would want. And so that had to be a lot of fun. Now I'm curious for you, because you have done so many different things. And I know you were talking earlier about how HGTV kind of inspired you to become an interior designer. So what was it like to actually go to kind of have that full circle moment of working with HGTV?
It was fun. I made some friends. It was interesting because you got to learn about the agendas of the different machines that are at work, right? HGTV's job, first and foremost, is to provide programming. It's HGTV, TV, right? And that TV is a huge part of it. And I know there's a lot of designers that are like, they don't really, they're not really showing the reality, and and I get that. But what I
that's
do,
the same with regular movies. They don't
that's
show 15 years in real time because
no,
we ain't got that kind
we
of
don't
time to
have
watch
that
a movie.
exactly. We ain't got that kind of time.
So,
Exactly.
I mean, it's movie magic, but I think it also encourages clients to think that things can happen that quickly,
That
or
quickly. But it's
it'll
our
be
job to
usable. Yeah.
and it's our job to explain that. Like
Mhm.
what I found, like HGTV is a tool that has kept the conversation going, right? Same thing as, House or any of the other big sort of industry conglomerates. I have personal opinions about all of them, but the idea that they have kept the conversation going on a main stage, I'm not complaining.
And
I'm
they
not
validate
complaining.
the industry at the same time
And
too.
I couldn't have said that better. And they validate the industry. They do.
Mhm.
And so that helps. So then when you go meet with your client and you say, hey, look, here's what we're going to do. And they say, well, the Property Brothers did it, and I saw them do Kevin Hart's place in like 2 weeks. And it's like, And then I have that experience on HGTV where I can
Do you
say,
have Kevin Hart's budget?
well,
Because
that's the thing.
he probably has 300 people that can work for him. You can only afford 12.
You tell right exactly. You say to them, it's that thing where you say I can do it cheap, fast, or good, and you can only pick two, right? If I do it cheap and fast, it's not going to be good. But if I do it good and fast, it's not going to be cheap. If I do it cheap and good, it's not going to be fast. So that sort of helps that conversation. It's like television is a different animal. The experience for me was great because I got to see HGTV wants to put on a television show that people watch. The builder just wants to get his stuff put up, right? He wants to get his stuff. And me, the designer, I want it to look like something. But I also had to think as a player, right? So what will people remember? Will they remember the room, or will they remember if I lost? Which way do I want to go? Do I want to win, or do I want a fantastic room?
Yeah.
I had to choose to go towards the winning route. So it was very interesting because it taught me about the politics of design, right? In order to win, I had to sacrifice a room that I probably would have, because I don't think I've ever said this, I liked my competitor's room better than I liked mine. My competitor's spaces. Yeah. And I told him
that for honesty. There you go.
I loved his spaces. I liked them way better than I liked what I did. He chose to do what he had been working longer than me at that point. And now that I've been working the same amount of time that he was working at that time, I get it. He chose to do what he wanted to do that he hadn't been able to do, which I've done now in some show houses where it's like, I'm just going to do me. I'm just going to do what I have not been able to do. But with that being my first experience, I was like, I want to win. So, which in the end didn't matter, because I would go to new clients would call me and I'd be like, oh, so you saw the show. So you saw me, and they were like, what show? And I'd be like, oh. And they're like, no, we just Googled designers in our area and you came up. And I was like, oh, okay.
A little ego deflating.
Yeah, I mean, really, because nobody saw, I hate to say this, nobody saw the show. It was on up against Monday Night Football and Dancing with the Stars. So what did...
Well, is that really... Oh, yeah, the Dancing with the Stars. I was like, is that really your demographic, the people that would be watching Monday Night Football? But then the Dancing with the Stars...
I believe Dancing with the Stars. I believe that. Yeah, because they were like, oh, no. And what would happen is after people would hire me, they would, I guess, maybe either follow me on Instagram, or then they would find it and they would make like little jokes. Oh, you hate ceiling fans, or oh, we heard that you don't like this, you don't like that. And that's when they would find the show. But typically it wasn't beforehand. It was.
Oh, wait, so you hate ceiling fans? I'm learning something new here.
I
What are some of your don'ts? I haven't asked anybody that yet.
It's not a don't.
Okay.
But I hate them. You know, my biggest don't is don't have somebody in your family that is a creative in any field, and ask, or in your friendship circle, and ask them for advice and not take it. And then my other don't is for the creative, don't let anybody in your friendship circle or your family ask you for advice and you don't charge them. Because if you charge them, they'll take you seriously. If you don't charge them, they just become, people who ask you questions and don't follow through on it because they just think it's a hobby. That's probably my biggest don't, because I don't really have. I could sit here and say, well, 2 on a rug. Always try to have at least all 2 or all 4 legs on the rug, right? But then there's always a situation that comes up where that may not be the case. And it works like, in a huge foyer where maybe the furniture is pushed against the wall and the rug doesn't touch any of the furniture. And that works really, really well. So I don't have any don't buy I don't think anybody does this anymore. Don't buy the bath mats. Like the toilet covers. Back in the day, people used to buy the toilet seat cover and the thing that went around.
And they would stain the seats.
Yeah, don't buy those. That's my biggest dump. But I don't even think they're in production
wait, do you remember the plastics? Like the plastic runner and the plastic. So my grandmother, God rest her soul, she was she worked for social services, and I would stay with her during the summers, and we would do these different home visits.
Yeah.
And it was always so interesting to see the different ways people lived. And it would, like, they would have these rooms in the den, because this is all in North Carolina in the South. They would have these beautiful, like, great rooms, all this beautiful stuff, and everything was covered in plastic, and you couldn't touch anything. And they had like a guest bathroom. Couldn't touch. Well, since we were guests, I guess we could have, but I wasn't touching anything. But that was like the room we got to sit in and hang out with them. And then you would go see the rest of their house, and you're like, well, this looks lived in. Why do you have this beautiful room that you're not living in, clearly, that you're just showing off for what? Like, that would be my only don't have rooms that you can't use.
Don't live in. I agree. I totally, especially nowadays, there's too many great things out there that you can have really beautiful stuff covered in amazing fabric that's quality, but it will last. And that way you can live in your space. I agree, because my grandmother was the same. Her living room was covered in plastic, and we used to go out and stay the summers, and she would let us sit in there, but then we would be sticking to the furniture,
especially summertime.
Yeah, and we're like, oh my god. She still.
Or would leave the dents from the last person that was sitting there. Like, no, I'm good.
We joke with her still to this day. She covers everything in plastic, and we're just like,
who are you waiting for? The Pope?
Like, I don't want it to get messed up. And I'm like, well, use it. That's what it's there for. Yeah. I love it.
Or I like people feeling limited by the room, that's the only thing it could be. Like when my kid was younger, our dining room was a playroom because we didn't need a dining room. We had a kitchenette and we had the other stuff. So that was easier, and it didn't have carpet. So it was like perfect place for her to play with chalk and whatever, and us not to worry about anything, as opposed to her real quote unquote playroom was carpeted and all. I was like, no, you're not painting in that room. So I think that's another one. Like, don't feel limited by what it's called for that to be the room, or especially now, like every room needs to have multi-functions in a way.
No, it does. And I always ask, one of the first questionnaires I send out once a client is signed is, I sort of ask about how you live, because I'm not really interested in what your favorite colors are and what color combinations you like and don't like, because that will come maybe, and maybe it won't, but I can handle that. Like because I've had a client say, I hate that sofa. I hate that sofa. And I'm like, do you hate the sofa or do you hate the color? And she's like, oh my God, nobody ever asked me that. I think that's what it is. I think it's just the color. I could probably do it if it wasn't red. And I'm like, yep. So we just, we just redid the sofa in a different fabric, and she loved it. So I always ask questions like, how do you want to feel when you come home? How do you want to live in your house? How do you want to entertain? What does home mean to you? Where do you travel on vacation for business? Where do you travel on vacation? Where do you travel on business? And where you travel to these places, where do you stay? What activities? Because then, like you said, I have clients right now that it's a formal living room, but they don't use it like that, but they love music. And I'm like, so then where is your music room up here? If you love music, there's going to be a place on every level that you're going to have music. So why aren't you putting the piano in here? Let's just make this a music room. It's it can be multifunctional. We'll have seating. You can entertain guests in here, but we can also make it about music. So I agree with you. Like using the rooms just for, having 35 dining spaces in the home may not be necessary. It may not be necessary. Let's playrooms converted. I've done that a million times. It makes so much more sense. It really, really does.
I feel vindicated because there were some friends that are like, why don't you have a dining room?
Because I don't need it.
Because first of all, whenever I do throw parties, people are always standing and conversing. They're always like, well, when I used to, they were always walking around standing. They were never really sitting anyway.
Or in the kitchen, if they could.
And then there's that. They're hanging around the bar. Yeah. And they're all standing for the most part. And so it's like, why do that? And my parents always entertained a lot when I was a kid too. And so I just knew from experience that you don't need a dining room unless you're planning to serve Thanksgiving dinners and stuff or have family dinners on a regular basis, which is not my thing. Yep. So, we'll meet at a restaurant instead for that.
It's funny. I was just traveling with one of my very best friends, and she said, we were talking, and I did her. It's almost been 10 years that I did her space, and she said, "Do you know that it's a living and dining room combined?" And she said, "Do you know that space hasn't changed? Like not one thing, not one accent, not one thing has changed in the." And I said, "Are you kidding me?" She said, "Yeah, we never go in there. We never use it." Yeah. And I'm just like, you gotta use that space.
No kidding. Well, I want to make sure everyone knows where to follow you so they can work with you next, especially now that you work virtually as well. So where can everyone get in contact with you, or where's the best way for them to reach out to you?
So
to ask for that free advice. Just kidding.
Yeah, right.
Get your budget ready first.
That's right. I always say the only thing I give out free is my business card, but no. The website is nilejohnson.com. That's super easy. And my Instagram is Nile Johnson, @Nile Johnson. So they're both super easy. And you can find me on either one of those places. Anything else is sort of automated. So it will take me forever to answer. But Instagram, I'm on actively, and my website those are both great places.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for being my guest. I cannot wait to meet you at Dallas Market.
I'm looking forward to it.
See your beautiful home that you guys created up in Massachusetts one day.
Thanks.
Although I'll have to wait till next summer because I don't do cold weather.
Me either. And I live in Pennsylvania, but I don't like the cold weather either. So I get it.
Yeah, summer bunnies, come on down. All right, well, it was so nice meeting you, and thanks again for being on the E Spot.
Thanks.